Controversial from the start, the TRC principally sought to get at the truth of apartheid. In order to get off the ground, the TRC found it necessary to offer the promise of amnesty as a means to getting at the truth. The Commission was to focus on the time period between the Sharpeville massacre and the inauguration of Mandela, and to consider for amnesty only those who committed acts of a political nature and only after they made a full confession. Chaired by Nobel Peace Prize winner Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the 16-member commission held public hearings throughout South Africa where victims of political violence and human rights abuses could air their grievances and where those who committed those acts could confess their wrongdoing. The mission was to begin to heal the many, often tragic wounds, but first the cause and nature of the injuries and injustices had to be revealed. There were moments of intense public drama and anguish, and there were remarkable moments where victims expressed not only a willingness to forgive, but on the part of some whites, a willingness to admit the responsibility of the beneficiaries of apartheid for some of the horrors of the past. South African citizen Beth Savage, severely injured in an ANC bombing in 1992, was one of many who expressed hope that forgiveness and reconciliation could one day be achieved.
I would like to meet that man that threw the grenade in an attitude of forgiveness, and hope that he could forgive me too, or for whatever reason. But I would very much like to meet them.
Because the Commission had the power to grant amnesty from prosecution, chilling details of atrocities emerged from those who perpetrated crimes and who now sought to avoid criminal charges.
Member of the South African Communist or ANC was a legitimate target as far as we were concerned. The idea was the psychological destabilizing of the organization as well as the disruption of the practical logistical infrastructure and organization.
This is one of the most despised men in South Africa, Craig Williamson, who was a spy during apartheid and sought amnesty at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for his role in several murders.
We believed we were doing good. We believed that we were doing right. We believed that we were justified, that the moral high ground was ours.
During its 3 years, the Commission experienced its shares of criticism and resistance. Those who sided with the anti-apartheid struggle refused to admit that their acts of violence were the equivalents of those acts in defense of apartheid. Many in the black community were deeply offended by the promise of amnesty, and while ordinary policemen and politicians were exposed for their crimes, bigger fish such as former Presidents Botha and de Klerk either refused to appear before the Commission or refused to express culpability for any of their actions. But in all, the TRC hearings were an impressive achievement, operating under financial constraints, obstructionist tactics by former government officials, and in an environment where documented evidence was almost non-existent. The Commission forced white South Africa to confront what black South Africa knew only too well, that apartheid was far more and far worse than simply a failed form of government. The TRC struck a balance between those who wanted to simply turn the page on South Africa's brutal past and those who wanted revenge. The Commission widely understood that courtroom trials would have lasted years, and with the need for rules of evidence would have made convictions unlikely. The rift between the races might have only deepened as a result. While South Africa still must cope with many inequalities in education, healthcare, job opportunities, and housing, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission began what will hopefully be a future that will ensure democracy, the use of law, and a culture that respects all human rights. The TRC was very important in that without the forgiveness that it brought, very little healing or hope probably could be had in South Africa. Thanks in no small part to the work of the TRC, a new society has begun to build a promising future.